One of the things that we might note, Jonathan, is that the default man is useless. Right? So, so for example, I'm going to get myself in trouble here, but I don't really care. So in the Arab world, broadly speaking, the Arab world produces about as much as Spain. Okay, well, why? Well, it's part of the reason is the men don't work. Now, that's not surprising. What's surprising is that any men ever work, because work is difficult and it requires sacrifice. And so the question is, and this is the anthropological question, the question of initiation, how do you socialize and civilize men? Because the default is going to be trivial hedonism. Of course it is, because it's easier. Of course it's going to be the default. The default's always what's simpler and more fragmented. Well, you tell them a story of heroic responsibility, and you draw, even more importantly, you draw a connection between responsibility and adventure. You know, and so it's so interesting because so many men have reflected this back to me, and I literally mean thousands, because I've said, you know, what you do is you look for the maximum burden, and you note that in service to that, you find meaning. And so you can do that with truth. You can do it with responsibility. And the young men will come up to me, and they do this daily, I would say, and say, you know, 5 years ago, I decided I was going to start taking responsibility for myself and tell the truth. And like everything's changed in consequence, everything. And so what we're doing this bigotry of soft expectations with men. And one of the things I got right at the beginning was, see, the male attitude towards younger men isn't the feminine ethos of acceptance. So you could imagine the dynamic in a family is that this is a stereotype, but I'm going to go with it anyways. The mother says to the child, "You're lovely the way you are." And the father says, I kind of like you, but you could be a lot more. And those are good. Those are really good together, you know, because when the child goes out from the mother, he's encouraged, let's say, by the masculine, go out. And then when he's exhausted, or she's exhausted for that matter, she can come back to the mother and be accepted. And that's the standard pattern of, you know, security seeking and then exploration. Now, what I've been doing with young men is saying to them, you could be a lot more than you are. And it's an insult in a way, because it means you're not good enough now, but it prioritizes the optimized future self. And that's actually hugely advantageous, you know? And so I think what we're doing that's wrong with young men, well, and I think we're doing it to young women too in a more subtle manner, is not asking, not requiring, or even demanding nearly enough. So they default to trivial hedonism, obviously.
Yeah, that's right. Let's keep going on this theme about adventure, challenge, burden. One of the most interesting findings that I came across when writing the book, in the chapter on play, I cover work by a Norwegian psychologist named Ellen Sandsider, who has an article from 10 years ago, where she goes through the 6 kinds of thrills. She says, thrilling play is the most powerful anti-anxiety agent. That is, kids will choose to do things where they can get hurt. They will choose to climb a tree to the point where they're scared, and then they'll go a little higher, and then maybe they'll stop. And then the next day they can go higher. You know, once you learn to bicycle over jump ramps and stairs. So kids are seeking thrills. And she says there's high places, fast speeds, dangerous tools, hiding, disappearing. There's a couple others, I forget what. Rough and tumble play, I suppose, of fighting is one. And she points out that it's that feeling of thrill. That's like, you know, because, you know, there's all kinds of imaginative games. Those are very nice. Imagination has all kinds of benefits. But the most, it's like the most exciting play is where there's some danger. You might get hurt, and you're maybe laughing and also afraid. And that kind of play is actually what dads specialize in. I remember when I was a kid, you know, on the beach, like my father would pretend to be a monster, giant monster chasing us. And my sister, we'd run and we were kind of scared, but also laughing our heads off. So that's thrilling. And this is where I'm coming to see, my book has really caught fire with mothers in particular. Mothers were more concerned about this. They felt it more. And they're driving the efforts to get phones out of schools in general. Men are involved too, of course. But what I'm thinking nowadays is that men, dads in particular, really have a role to play in giving their kids more thrill and fear. Now, fear, I don't mean fear of them. I mean play that involves
exposure to fear.
Exposure to fear. Thank you. Yes, exposure to fear and risk. And that can even be just at an amusement park, just taking your kids to an amusement park where there's not really any physical danger, but man, it is scary when you go on a high roller coaster. So kids need that. It might be that boys need it more. At least boys need more rough and tumble play. That I'm confident. They need more rough and tumble. I don't know about thrills and fear. I just don't know. But our boys, I think, are suffering from a lack of adventure, challenge, responsibility. You said the soft bigotry of low expectations. And we need to give them back a world in which there are such possibilities.